Welcome to one of our last sessions of NACW. I'm amazed there's actually this many people here still at this hour. I was joking earlier that I think we're going to have to hand out mezcal or something to get people to come in. So maybe we'll start doing that. Judy, Abby, get it going. Mezcal all around.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm Amy Kessler. I am the Director of Latin American Operations at the Climate Action Reserve. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with these esteemed panelists today. Anna, so good to see you virtually. So today we have Eduardo Piquero of Mexico 02, Ale Blanco from the Secretary of Environment of Jalisco, and Ana Moreno of the Ministry of Environment of Panama. So before we get started and diving into some of the details and the nitty-gritty of these incredible developments and specific jurisdictions throughout Latin America, I'm just going to give a very quick overview to set the stage of all the exciting action that's happening in both the compliance and voluntary space in Latin America. First off, in Latin America, there are 4 federal carbon taxes: in Argentina, in Chile, in Colombia, and in Mexico. 3 of those use offsets, only one of them being an exception. Argentina does not currently use offsets, although Mexico is also debatable. Eduardo, I'll leave that to Eduardo to explain later. There's also a lot of action happening at the subnational level. There are over 5 states, mainly in Mexico, that have carbon taxes, with Jalisco being the shining star. So again, I'll let Ali explain all that fantastic work. And then there's also, I'd say, 1.5 emissions trading systems working throughout Latin America. So Mexico, of course, has the pilot phase, and Eduardo will talk about that emissions trading system up and running, moving into compliance next year. We also have Colombia that has mandated their ETS since 2018, potentially moving into a pilot phase in 2023, 2024. And then also Chile is excitingly discussing establishing an ETS. So that's on the compliance side. On the voluntary side, we also have so much action in Latin America. It is the world's 2nd largest producer of voluntary offset credits, representing about 20% of the supply globally, primarily in the forest sector. So much exciting action happening in both the compliance and the voluntary space all throughout Latin America. So let's dive into some of these incredible developments. First, we're going to talk a bit about the compliance side and the developments in those compliant actions throughout the Latin American space, particularly in these incredible jurisdictions. And then we'll talk a bit about the voluntary action happening and how those spaces are going to interact in the future. So Eduardo, we're in this transition year in the Mexico ETS. We're moving towards a compliance next year. Are we going to get there, 2023? What do you think?
Kind of a difficult question.
Started off easy.
It started very easy. Will we get there? Yes, I think we will get there. We're finishing the pilot phase right now. As I mentioned during yesterday's session, Mexico's overall 60 to 70 companies covered by the ETS, around 600 installations nationally. It means around 100 million tons of CO2 that are regulated by the ETS. And 10% of that could be covered using offsets. Offsets coming from nature-based solutions, from methane, and from transport. Those are the sectors that have already been selected. And those protocols are designed and are out there, and we should see them published anytime, hopefully very soon. Still, a lot needs to be defined by the Ministry of Environment in terms of what the compulsory, mandatory phase would look like. I believe that we're gonna see some news lowering the threshold of 100,000 tons of CO2 as the only gas that is right now regulated. I believe that might be changed and updated. I do also believe some sectors will be included that are not included today. Perhaps aviation would be the obvious one, national aviation, of course. And that will coexist with the federal tax on carbon, that it's in force since 2014, that only covers CO2 emitted through combustion, and has a tax of around 40 pesos for ton of CO2. Unfortunately, it mostly covers state-owned companies, Pemex and CFE. That means that they account for around 80% of what comes from that tax, and that tax cannot be covered using offsets. It has been analyzed, it has been discussed internally, and we haven't been able to move that forward. So that tax is not generating emission reductions. As you've mentioned, some other things in Latin America are very, very important, but Mexico has a different story. Mexico is important because many things are going on subnationally again. So we have a lot of states besides Jalisco that are doing a lot in terms of carbon pricing. We have the state of Querétaro enacting a new carbon tax of 500 pesos, that's 25 US around, per ton of CO2. And it covers around 40 to 50 different installations in the state of Querétaro that has already been approved by the legislative chamber, and it's already out there. So they need the secondary regulation. We have some other news. We have, you know, that the states of Tamaulipas, they do have a tax on carbon of 250 pesos per ton. That's around perhaps 12, 13 pesos for 13 US for a ton of CO2. That has been challenged and has some operational issues. Yes, that's right. We have the state of Baja California with a carbon tax, again on fossil fuels. We have the state of Tamaulipas with a carbon tax, mostly on the mining industry. We have the states of Hidalgo enacting a carbon tax, and we have the state of Mexico, the largest state in the country, also enacting a carbon tax in December last year. So many things going on subnationally. It's not the only stories. It's not only the only stories that we've seen subnationally, but it will be very interesting to see how these subnational markets that are evolving will coexist with the national ETS, and how it will coexist with the federal tax on carbon tax or carbon emissions. And it will be very interesting to know how they will coexist with the voluntary carbon market. Mexico is called to be a worldwide supplier of offsets, mostly for nature-based solutions. So I think, Amy, that the next couple of years will be tremendously important for the future of offsets in Mexico. Not only nature-based solutions. We need different protocols out there. We need the chemical industry producing offsets. We need offsets from different sources of energy. We need sources of industrial sources also producing offsets. I know that the additionality discussion in the developed world has evolved differently, but the story throughout Latin America is different. We need to mobilize investment. We need to do it very quickly. And the carbon market is the most cost-effective manner to do so.
Absolutely. I cannot disagree with you there. That's why we're here. Well, I'm gonna go over to Ali. I think I said earlier I was gonna go to Ana, but I think we're at the subnational level right now. So let's just keep that rolling. Jalisco is really like the golden example of an incredible subnational action, and everything you do. You've done so much work over many years on this. And now you're coming out with a carbon tax that will be including an offsets program. I hope it will be replicated and used as a model in many places. Can you tell us about how that's working in Jalisco?
Thank you, Amy. Yes, well, I would love to say that at this time we are implementing the tax, but that didn't happen. We hope the next year it will be in function. what really happened is that we designed this tax in the worst phase of the pandemic. So the price of the carbon tax, it was very low, thinking about the impact it will have to the industry. But the tax is already designed, and maybe in this period of time, we have time to review it and to adjust many things that now the reality is different, no? In that time. We designed it with, of course, with an offset option, including carbon credits from forestry and other sectors like waste, methane. And also, we be very careful to not interfere with the national ETS. We are going to be taxing only the industries or the sectors under the, how you say, the umbral, it's the same?
Threshold.
The threshold from the national government. So we are trying not to compete with them, no? And we can, in the both markets, on the both mechanisms, to be complementary, not to be competing, right? And also, this tax, it's not the only action we are doing in Jalisco. We already have signed a business alliance for climate that includes 47 empresas, companies, and some chambers and association of industries. They have already signed the alliance, and they have goals of net zero to 2030 and 2050. So it's different levels of compromise. And also in that alliance, we are allowing to compensate the emissions with offsets, so carbon credits. Also, we have been thinking about the standards that could be used to do these compensations, and of course, CAR is one of them, and also another standards that are recognized the international level. And that's the way we are thinking to develop a local mechanism of market. We want to do the Jalisco's carbon market, and we are about to work in it with Eduardo in this year, and that's in a level of a local level. But we are not like leaving the national market or the international market outside. We are also working with ejidos and comunidades to develop projects that could be sell credits in the voluntary carbon markets for other countries or states, or even in the national market when it works, right? So we are trying to be in all the scenarios and to try to develop these actions, because we are convinced that carbon pricing is an opportunity to actually have action in the climate results in the climate action, right? And so that's what we are doing at the state. And also, I would like to say that we have a strategy that as a government we are developing. We are not looking to develop carbon projects just like in a single way of or just alone. What we are doing is to make the carbon credits a co-benefit or other policies that we are implementing in the state. So the carbon, it's an additional income for the communities and ejidos but they have already a principal activity, sustainable activity that conserves, that preserves ecosystems and biodiversity, and also generates governance at inside the communities. That's the way we are trying to develop all these projects. And we are also working. We started last year. We have found some finance from different actors. GCF Task Force is one of them. Also CLUA, Climate and Land Use Alliance. And the UK PAC also gave us some financing last year and also this year through Mexico CO2 and also through ProNatura Sur. So we have these partners that are helping us to develop all these actions in the state.
Amazing, Ali, that's fantastic. I love hearing that. So much exciting work, and I have so many more questions. I'm going to come back to you. I want to turn to Ana here, our virtual friend. Ana, Panama is also, employing a really unique model for supporting the voluntary carbon space, actually. Right, so you have your Reduce Your Footprint program, in which the federal government is supporting the development of a national voluntary market. What does that mean? How is that going to work?
Well, thank you, Amy. I don't know if you can hear me well.
Yes, perfectly.
Just checking. Listening to Mexico and what Mexico is doing, we are in a whole another level. We are at baby steps, but I'm going to try to explain to you how we are thinking that the market could work in a tiny country like Panama. So I'm going to start from the beginning. Through the Executive Decree number 100 of October 20 of 2020, Panama creates the national program Reduce Your Footprint, which seeks to be the macro tool for the management and monitoring of Panama's low carbon economic and social development, facilitating the transition to the country's carbon negativity by 2050. And it should be noted that initially this executive decree established the transition to a carbon neutrality of the country. But following the results of the second biennial update report, Panama was established as a carbon sink country. So the government decided to redirect that target so it can maintain its carbon negativity at 2050. This same decree enables Mi Ambiente to progressively establish the future market and also establish and help the economic recovery and promotes the reduction of GHG emissions at the lowest possible cost. Later on, we have the Executive Decree number 142 of December 9 of 2021, and when the government established the market formally and its components, and we hope that the market will have three components. The first one is the National GHG Management Programs. The second one is the National Offsetting System. And the third one is the Panamanian Carbon Exchange. In the case of the first component, the National GHG Management Programs are contained under the Reduce Your Footprint programs. The government has already developed 4 GHG management programs. 3 of them are still in progress. Those are Reduce Your Footprint Municipal, or as we call them, RTH Municipal, RTH Products at products level, and RTH Projects at projects level. There is just one of the programs that is currently operational, and that is Reduce Your Footprint Corporate Carbon, or RTH Corporate Carbon. The first component of the market will be conformed by this program, the only one that is operational, RTH Corporate Carbon. Through this program, the government seeks to standardize a process and establish a form to calculate, report, and verify information of the GHG generated within the organizational limits of the entities. This component will represent the demand within the market. And it is important to note that this program, RTH Corporate Carbon, is already in operation, but is currently voluntary. The projection is for companies to increase their efforts to reduce emissions and offset them using the national offsetting system, that is the second component of the future market, until they achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The government expects that reporting emissions and meeting the reduction targets will become mandatory for those companies identified as large emitters. And then for the second component, that is the national offsetting system, it will be conformed by projects that seek to reduce emissions or increase GHG removals. For this, there will be a registry of offsetting projects that will reflect the general information of the project and the accredited national unit reduction units, UNRES, as we call them. Those are the government carbon credits. And the government has conducted a technical exchange with the California Air Resources Board to learn from California's experience about these carbon pricing instruments. Also, as you know, Amy, the government has been working with international programs, such as Climate Action Reserve, of course, and other ones as American Carbon Registry, BERRA, Gold Standard, and Plan Vivo, to select and prioritize existing methodologies under these programs, which can be adapted to the country and used by project developers to obtain carbon credits. The proposed process of the national offsetting system consists that the project developer first register under the international program of their choice, using the methodology that best suits their project and performing the entire process to obtain credits under the chosen program. Once the process has been completed and the credits have been granted, the project developer should approach Meambiente or the Ministry of Environment, where a national review will be carried out to ensure Panama's social and environmental safeguards are met. And then the project may be registered in the project registry and the UNRES will be accredited. At the moment, it is intended to work with projects mainly within the forestry sector, but also in the energy sector, specifically in energy efficiency, use of refrigerants, and other sectors such as agriculture and waste. And finally, the third component is the Panamanian Carbon Exchange, or BPC. That will be the exchange platform where the purchase and sale of UNRES is expected to happen. And it is expected that this platform will be managed by an external actor to the ministry to ensure that the required transparency and cybersecurity criteria are met. And at the moment, it is projected that the purchase and sale of UNRES will happen only at national level, but we are in an early stage and taking some difficult decisions. So for now, this is what we have.
That's fantastic, Ana. I don't think you're that far behind Mexico. I think you guys are coming along pretty well. And I'm excited to see it develop even more. I do have one just quick follow-up question. So you said, currently voluntary, expected to be mandatory sometime, maybe. Do we have any thoughts on, timeline for that?
Well, we're hoping as soon as possible, but I don't think it's going to be before maybe 5 years, maybe like 5 years from now, because we have to create that culture. In Panama, we don't have that kind of culture of reporting the GHG. We have a long way to go, and we need to create those capacities in the companies. We had the first year of the RTH Corporate Carbon in 2021, and 71 organizations registered below the program, but only 58 could deliver the requirements. So we need to create those capacities first, and I think it's going to take some time. So that's why I'm thinking about 5 years. So.
Awesome, that's fantastic. And I think we've talked a lot at the conference so far about how the voluntary space can be a space to then help develop and grow the compliance market over time. So that's great. So let's turn to the voluntary space then. Eduardo, as I mentioned at the very beginning, LATAM is the #2 supplier, the global supplier of voluntary carbon offsets. And Mexico certainly has a thriving voluntary market. I love if you could talk a bit about the growth and that space, and then where else you see really opportunistic areas of growth throughout LATAM and the voluntary space.
No, sure, of course. The voluntary space boomed in Mexico in the last 2 years. It's been impressive the amount of projects that have been registered and they're, of course, under the reserve and have gotten there thanks to Brett and other developers that have done a lot in the design of nature-based solutions and that are there offering reliable, high-quality emission reductions. I do believe, however, Amy, that there is a lot to be done. There is still a lot to be done. Those buyers in the voluntary market space, some of them are pre-compliance, and I heard somebody saying that all voluntary markets are pre-compliance. I do believe that that's the case. But many of them also, Amy, are looking for further emission reductions. And I do think that part of our role is to guide them to develop more projects, scale, and to have reliable frameworks. That's why I need to make an announcement.
Oh, I love it. Please.
I have also always believed in a cleaner, more prosperous future, and Mexico has everything to do that. So we've been inspired, of course, by the Panama case and what you guys have been done in terms of creating a scheme that it's a transition to a market mechanism, and of course by the task force to scale up the voluntary carbon markets, together with the UK government, where we'll be working during 2022 and during 2023 in the design of the Mexico Western Bajío carbon market. That's a new framework that will be launched by the end of this year, with the help, of course, with Brett and together with LATAM Carbon. We will be working on the design of a compensation mechanism for the states of Jalisco, Querétaro, Guanajuato, and Aguascalientes. Those 4 states account for 35% of Mexico's GDP, for 20% around of Mexico's population. So that's extremely representative. And further states can also be integrated. This scheme will include, of course, standardized rules to compensate emissions and to assign recognition to carbon neutral products and services. To do that, the Guadalajara Carbon Exchange will be launched. It will be a mechanism to compensate emissions in that region for Mexican projects and Mexican buyers. That means that this is the first step in a regional approach in Mexico to do so, and we think that this is extremely replicable. So, and we've learned a lot of you, Ana, in Panama. So then, this will be a fast, reliable, and credible means to achieve emission reductions very quickly. We'll be working with projects all over these regions and with buyers, and with a lot of buyers based in Jalisco and all over the region.
Amazing. That's so exciting, Eduardo. I love it. I think that's fantastic. I want to ask just one quick question about how will this interact then? How will we see that play out with the compliance national market? How will those two spaces, Ali talked about ensuring that the design of the Jalisco tax was going to be complementary to the compliance market national level. How will these exciting new markets interact in that space? And how will we have enough supply as well to feed both markets? And how will we get the price in both markets to be sufficient? Because there's price disparities in these different markets.
We will need scale, so there is a big portion of the work that will rely on offset providers.
Yeah.
So yes, we need a lot of scale, and we're confident the sources to do that, resources will be there, and on the other side, how it will talk to the national market. The national market is still to be defined whether the compulsory phase would look like. I do imagine though that most of the sources regulated under the Mexican ETS are not the clients of the voluntary carbon market we are talking about. This is mostly devoted to service companies, to companies based in the region, Many of them are new companies that have installed operations in Querétaro, in Guadalajara, in Bajío, automakers, for instance, that are not covered by the ETS. So it wouldn't be in conflict with the ETS. However, let me stress again, it's voluntary.
Yeah.
A big portion of this is to also help state level action transition to a compulsory phase in which a carbon tax will be fully implemented, such as in the case of Querétaro right now and what Jalisco is planning. So it's kind of a first step towards a pricing mechanism.
Awesome, fantastic.
And we have 12 months.
Well, let's get to work.
Yeah, well, we're ready.
And I'm actually going to turn back to you. I want to understand as well. You know, there's so much discussion about cooperation throughout Latin America. Certainly, you know, with potential of linking markets, but also with Article 6. What is Panama thinking? You know, how will Panama be able to take advantage of these opportunities, and what do they need to be able to do that? What frameworks, rules, et cetera? What do we need to make that happen, Anna?
That's an interesting question. And well, Panama has dedicated the last 4 years to strengthening of its national inventories. This year, actually, we launched the Sustainable System of National Greenhouse Gas Inventories, the SINHEI, under the National Climate Transparency Platform, which will facilitate the process of planning, data collection, preparation of reports, and their validation. Additionally, the Transparency Platform is also working on a tracking system for the NDC and the National Strategy for Low Carbon Economic and Social Development, which will monitor the country's progress in meeting its climate commitments. In combination with the components that I mentioned before of the future market, and through the Transparency Platform, it is expected to generate an accounting system at national level, which allows traceability to mitigation results that contribute to national compliance with the NDC and those that can be marketed internationally under mechanisms of the Paris Agreement within Article 6, CORSIA, or other voluntary commitments, so that any transfer is transparent and remains aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. In addition, institutional arrangements must be established at Panama for the national approval process of projects that choose to use mechanism of Article 6 that ensure compliance with the NDC and the environmental integrity of the international transfers. As I mentioned before, Panama has begun to analyze the adoption of voluntary market methodologies such as Climate Action Research, BERRA, Gold Standard, and generate the capacity at the national level of these protocols, preparing us for the national market and its future connection with the Paris mechanisms. We look forward to all the efforts this year to fully operationalize the Article 6 regarding the market and non-market mechanism. And I would also like to say that we do need capacity building on how to implement the Article 6 in our countries.
Right, absolutely. Thanks, thank you, Anna. Ale, I'm wondering in the state level, how does that play out as well? So you talked about making sure that your market would be complementary to the national ETS, but there are also these international opportunities and growth, growth in voluntary space, of course, but also in Article 6. And how is Jalisco thinking about that from a state level and ensuring that your carbon tax is able to function within this dynamic space that we're all in now?
As I said before, we are thinking about all the possible areas we can develop different strategies. And we are also developing we have already we already have a project with a RED Plus jurisdictional RED Plus project that we are working in coordination with the federal government. So we are trying to make something different, maybe because why not? We like to get in trouble all the time. It's like the mark of the house. So what we're trying to do is to make like a net of actions and to all the pieces, like building like a Lego. I say that we are building a Lego that allows the state to be part of all these markets in an ordinary way, in an organized way. Yeah. Because we need to be sure that what we develop at state level doesn't interfere of what it's doing the federal level. So we are trying to have accountability rules at the state level that allows to make sure that we are not double counting with the federal level or even into the state. And we are trying to make it different because we are making a structure based on our governance, a structure inside the state based on the juntas intermunicipales, that it's an association of municipalities that have a technical team that help them to develop all these projects related to environment. So what we are doing is to make them the developers of the projects. So what we want to do is to assure that the sellers have a safe space where to develop these projects and look for market, and also that the buyers have be sure that what they are buying respect the safeguards first, and also that is the credits they are buying have this integrity, right? But we are trying to keep this to all these things we are doing, always be, or trying, because it's not that easy, trying to talk with the federation, to explain what we are doing, and to make this arrangement to see how we can work together and be part of all of these markets. Also, they are thinking a lot about Article 6. The federation is, we know that as a state government, we are not a direct part of the market. At the end, if you talk about removals, well, it's at the end, it's a transaction between a buyer and a seller. And if you talk about Article 6 and Red Plus, well, the only seller, at least at this moment in Mexico, is the federal government. As a subnational government, we don't have access to that market. We need to go through the federation. So that's why we are trying to make a good governance in all the state, in all the levels, through the communities and ejidos, the municipalities, the state government, and the federal government. So we can do this net of work and be sure that we can be part of each market, but doing it right and being coordinated, so we can guarantee sellers and buyers that what we are doing, it's been doing right. And I also want to make an announcement, because not you.
I love this.
Yours is more important.
Anna, you're
Not
next.
true. You, well, you were very, how you say, modesto. Humble when you were talking about all the work we're going to do this year, because we are also going to build net zero certification for Jalisco State. Also, well, he already said about the Guadalajara Carbon Exchange. And we are going to work in a norm related to this net zero certification. And we also are going to have the Mexico Carbon Forum in Guadalajara this year. So everybody's invited. So it's a lot of work we are trying to do, and we have to do this year together. But we hope to have a good results at the end of the year. And maybe next year be talking to you again and telling you that we have already, we are going to certificate some projects. We need to certificate some projects by the end of the year. So maybe next year we have a lot of good news about what we have been working, and maybe we can have an award also.
Of course, of course.
Perfect. I look forward to having this panel again next year and hearing all about how all the amazing work is going then, and how these proclamations and new spaces are going to develop, certainly in Panama and Jalisco and Mexico in general, and LATAM in general. I have so many more questions, but I do want to give the floor and give the space so that the audience can ask questions. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, I don't know if we have mics. Okay, great, right here.
Hi, Matt Lithgow from Carbon Pulse. Thanks for the presentations. Question for Eduardo. I was wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail of dropping a major announcement with 30 minutes left in a 3-day conference. So I was wondering if you could just maybe describe a little bit more about this. I did not catch the name of the carbon market you're talking about, but you mentioned it's standardized rules to compensate for carbon neutral products and services. So I was wondering, you talked a little bit about maybe selling offset credits, but is there some sort of sustainable commodity approach in there as well? Just wondering how exactly this is designed to function, and then some of the organizations that are involved again, yeah, thanks.
Wonderful, of course, more than happy to. To be honest, most of it's under development, but we only have 12 months. We're working very closely with major nature-based solutions developer Brett in the design of several nature-based projects in those states. We will also work on the other field, mostly methane and chemical industry, to reduce emissions and try to offer them into this market. Buyers would be companies based in these 4 states that have already certain pledges in terms of carbon neutrality in either of the 4 states. In some states, you already have legislations, such as in Querétaro, but you don't still have in Jalisco. So within that 12-month period, you will also have regulation out there. The model is that offsets could be traded between these 4 states, and probably during the first phase, offsets from outside these 4 states will be allowed. I'm just speculating. That's something that we haven't discussed yet, as most of the details. but we're extremely excited. There is a lot of interest, and it provides a very quick solution and source of offsets for a lot of companies, mostly foreign companies based in these 4 states that are sort of the Mexican China. They grow at double digits, even under COVID.
Any estimate for pricing or protocols? No?
Of course, protocols, but not pricing. Of course, protocols. I'm a great reserve believer, and I do believe that the reserves protocol provides an awfully good source of reliability for projects based in these 4 states. So most of the projects, I'm sure, will be developed under the reserves protocols.
Don't hate that. Any other questions? Yes, Pedro. Do you have,
Well, it's always sorry for bringing up the lawyer stuff, but But well, first of all, congratulations for the local carbon market, especially in Jalisco, where I lived for many years. So I'm quite proud about it. But one thing about this is now that we have, following the resolution from Supreme Court some years ago regarding state environmental taxes, and in specific, a state carbon tax in order to fix the price, how will this affect the national carbon market, first of all? And second, what will be the problems with double taxation issues here as well? Because now we know that states can issue taxes regarding matters of federal jurisdiction from the environmental point of view, such as carbon, such as wastewater, such as soil pollution. But for effects of carbon, how will this affect if you have a diversity of states with different carbon prices for establishing regional market or on the national market as well? Sorry for bringing that up. I'm always a party pooper, but well,
It's only
something
about
lawyers.
4 p.m. on the Friday. It's cool.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
All right,
I did carbon pulses here. So. No, just
It
one
feels
thing, and
like
I
just
drop it to
start.
you.
Oh, yeah.
States are allowed to produce to design environmental taxes as for the ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling of 2018, if I'm not wrong, with the Zacatecas case. After that, we have several then out there. It will be complex to have several regional schemes interacting with the national scheme. It will be complex. It's not impossible. We've seen it in other cases. We do see it in Spain, for instance, when you have regional approaches and you have the national approach. And of course, and we see it in our partners in North America with Canada and the US. So it's not something that can't be done. It's something that will be done. The sources are different. And I'm completely sure, and I'm a great believer that the Federation needs a very strong ETS. So we need a very, very well-functioning ETS, but we're going to need regulation on some other sources that are state-owned. So I think that we need a certain degree of coordination that needs to be approached.
Well, I will say that we had the best help to develop this tax, the Mexico CO2 team. So we were careful to don't be competing with the Federation. And we were making sure that what we are going to tax is not the same that the Federation is taxing. So that's the way we can be sure that it's not gonna mix. Right, so that's the way we do it. And another thing, and the carbon tax from the Federation, it's, oh my God, I don't want to say anything else, but we were very careful to make this tax, to design this tax as good as possible. And we have, how you say, the carrot and the la zanahoria, like el garrote.
Carrot and stick.
Because this tax has a destination. So that's something that don't happen in the national tax. And we have designed it to more or less the 70%, if I'm not wrong, David, goes to the economic sector to help them to change the way they produce and reduce the emissions. And the other 30% goes to the environmental fund to establish actions for mitigation and adaptation. So, and with this money, we are planning to help ejidos and comunidades to develop the carbon projects to compensate the tax.
Exactly. And Eduardo. Any other questions out here? Back to, yeah. Anita.
Anyways, it's me again. Another question for Eduardo based on that. You mentioned that this might be a possible first step towards scaling up into a compliance-based mechanism in these states. But you also mentioned the UK government funding, if I heard you correctly.
Correct.
That's sponsoring this. Is there any possibility or discussion that the offsets that are going to be generated under this program could be used within the UK emissions trading scheme for compliance purposes?
Not yet. We haven't had any discussions of the sort. So I would be lying. No, that's something that we haven't discussed. And yes, there is possibility of escalation. I mean, escalation into a compliance phase. That's something, it depends on each government. I can't speak for any of those governments, but for certain, Querétaro has a tax and they do want a compensation mechanism. And this scheme will be their compensation mechanism. And we hope several states do connect to it.
So in essence, similar to what Colombia's carbon tax is.
Sort
then.
of, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I have one for Ana here. Ana, Ale talked a bit about the importance of ensuring that these projects create co-benefits, social benefits, and incorporating the communities and ejidos in Mexico, of course. So I'm wondering, how is Panama viewing this as well? Is Panama also viewing the development of this program in social terms as well? And how would you ensure that those additional benefits are generated?
Well, I like to say that we are working like one day at a time. We are making some decisions yet, but we surely want to take into account those co-benefits so we can like cooperate with that just transition to help those small landowners or small project developers. But we are discussing that topic. But I can say that in the case of Panama, the executive decree number 142 that I mentioned before establishes that the Panamanian Carbon Exchange will capitalize the Mi Ambiente Adaptation Fund. So we are hoping to contribute in some way to some sustainable development and to contribute also to the adaptation of climate change at a national level. But as I said before, we are in an early stage, we are discussing those kind of topics. So we haven't made like a decision yet, and we don't have like a structure settled yet.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think we just have a few more minutes here. So in these last couple minutes, I just want to let every speaker provide any closing words, any closing thoughts as to how these markets are developing, any takeaways from this discussion or the conference in general.
You first.
Me first. Well, my conclusion is that we have a lot of work to do, but we don't have too many times. So we are going to be working in a marcha forzada. I don't know how you say that in English, but I think that as a state government, because maybe I'm the only state government here, and yesterday was Hidalgo. But our role as a state government is to help these markets to develop. We are doing our part at a local level, but we also want to do our part to be part of the international level. So we cannot decide to who can sell and who can buy. That's a decision that it's free for everyone, but what we can do is to provide these secure spaces where this can happen, and all these initiatives and actions and building capacities that help the local ejidos and comunidades start developing these projects, and that's our work. That's what we have to do, and what we are going to be doing this year and the next years until, well, the administration of these governments. But I hope the next governments keep on doing it, and that's all. That's all I want to say. Eduardo.
Coming always to California and to developing economies is sometimes we working in climate, we feel lagging behind in the developing world. We feel shameful that we are not doing enough. And I think that this new wave of carbon markets, they provide for Latin America the opportunity to close the gap. This is the opportunity to create wealth, to distribute better, and to get there with new projects. Nature-based solutions, they provide the projects we can offer. So this is our opportunity. I do believe that we still have a lot to do in the region in terms of MRV, a lot to do at the subnational levels and also at national levels. But this model that the voluntary carbon markets, they provide, what Panama is doing, it should be replicated very easily and very, very fast throughout the region. And we have some very large economies. We have Brazil, we have Argentina, we have Chile, we have Peru, we have Colombia, we have the Dominican Republic and other Central American countries. We need fast climate action sponsored by government, using voluntary carbon market as a pre-compliance mechanism.
Absolutely. Anna?
First of all, congratulations for the good work, Ale, Eduardo, and Amy. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to close by talking a little bit about the most popular topic, in my opinion, that is right now, that is Article 6. So I would like to say that, as you heard before, that Panama is making progress in the creation of a national carbon market. And this progress has shown that although we are moving in the right direction, we still have a long way to go to ensure compliance with international targets. We must remember that we need to foster the ambitious implementations of NDCs, even though Panama is a carbon sink country. Mechanisms under Article 6 play an essential role in national and ambitious government policies and targets. Therefore, as parties, we must establish robust processes to ensure mechanisms are used for a significant, measurable, and positive contribution to the global economy's transition to 1.5 Celsius degrees future, and in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. Environmental integrity should not be an option, and we must ensure the use of these mechanisms, including those by non-state actors, to be aligned with and contribute to achieving the Paris Agreement goals. Consequently, transfers must be transparent, credible, and widely used and understood by all the parties. Panama also strongly recognizes the need for capacity building for Article 6 implementation, especially in developing countries without enough experience with Kyoto mechanisms and specifically in institutional arrangements, design of baselines, and accountability systems. We do believe that enough understanding to ensure Article 6 can achieve the required ambition.
Amazing. Well, I said at the beginning, there's a lot of excitement going on throughout Latin America with 2 big announcements and all the amazing work happening in Panama. I don't think we let you down. I hope not, at least not for 4 p.m. on Friday. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all. And yeah, thank you.